Hi, I'm Kathy. I'm the Adult Services Librarian here at the Waynesville Library. And today I'm going to show you how to make an apple stack cake. It's part of my 7-part series on local delights, things that you ought to know how to make that are real common in our area here. And so let me just tell you a little bit about the apple stack cake. It's made from dried apples, and it's made with other ingredients that most people would have had in their home: molasses, buttermilk, flour. And it's interesting because you don't use cake pans. I'll show you how to actually make the layers. And it's one of those things that's born out of preservation culture. So most people would have had dried apples and would want to use them up in the winter months, and this is a really delicious cake and a way to use up some of those fruits that you had from the previous fall. So what you're going to need for the filling, and you can see in the cake here, it's a very dense cake and the layers are very thin. That layer in there is actually like a homemade applesauce that you make from dried apples. So the apple filling is a pound of dried apples, not freeze-dried, but actually dried or dehydrated apples. Dark brown sugar, cinnamon, ginger, vanilla, a little bit of salt, and water. And so I cook this. It takes about 15 minutes, and you can see the apples are kind of puffed up and there's a little bit of liquid in there. So it only takes about 15 minutes to soften them up. And you know, I doubt 50 years ago this would have been emulsified any other way but by hand. But luckily we have our handy immersion blender that we can use. And I just want to point out, this lovely immersion blender can be checked out from the Library of Things. So just come into the library and check out all the neat things we have that you can actually take home. So I'm just going to mix it up real quick. And you can use a blender if you don't have one of these, but if you don't, I highly recommend getting one because they are super handy to have in the kitchen. I'll show you what it looks like, what the texture looks like. You're going for like a chunky applesauce, not like apple butter. There are many stack cake recipes, and your family may have one that's different from this one, but this one is compiled from lots of different people that have made these for many years, and they helped me narrow it down to the best procedure and ingredients, I think. But of course, like I said, your family may make it a little differently. Some families actually do use apple butter. So what I'm doing is just emulsifying this, but I'm adding a little bit of water too, so that I can get the right texture. You can see this would be really hard to do by hand, so I'm happy for these gadgets that we have. So after you've finished using the immersion blender, or if you use a food processor, this is the texture that you want. You'll notice that there's still some chunks in it. It's really thick. That's what you want, because this is going to sit in between the cake layers for 24 to 48 hours. And if it's too loose, or if it's like the texture of apple butter, it's going to soak into your cake to the point where you lose the integrity of the layers. And as you can see from the layers on this cake, they're very defined, and that's what you're going for. So this is the right texture. Okay, so what we're going to do is we're going to set this aside, and we're going to make the cake batter. So when you make this cake batter, you'll notice there's a few things that are completely different from most cakes, and most layer cakes especially. It makes 6 layers. You don't use a cake pan. We're going to draw a circle on some parchment paper, and we're going to spread the batter on there, and they're just baked up real flat and almost like a molasses cookie, but about 8 inches around, and we're going to make 6 of those, and we're going to layer them. This batter is all-purpose flour. Try to buy the lowest protein flour that you can. It's White Lily Works, and really store brand is better than King Arthur because it has higher protein. So for this cake, you want to use all-purpose low protein flour. Baking soda, baking powder, cinnamon, a little bit of salt, 1½ sticks of butter, and a cup of sugar, some eggs, dark molasses or sorghum, and a cup of buttermilk. It's important, and don't buy low-fat or fat-free buttermilk, get the full fat. So I've got a stick and a half of butter already creamed with a cup of sugar, and what that means is you just mix it up for about 3 minutes until it turns a light yellow color, and you can see that the sugar's mixed in. So then what we want to do is add 2 eggs. And mix it a little bit before you add the next one. This is pretty typical for making a cake. And let that mix up a little bit. All right, so then what you want to do is add your molasses. It's a cup. I know it sounds like a lot, but remember you're making 6 layers, and this is a very molasses heavy dessert. It really does taste a lot like those soft molasses cookies that you get around Christmas time. So you want to go ahead and add the whole cup. I've never used sorghum, but if you prefer that, and if you can still find it anywhere, then you could use that. All right, so a cup of molasses. And then once we get this added in, we're going to add the dry ingredients, which I've already mixed together, which is your 2 leavening agents, your flour, a little bit of salt. All right. Get that mixed up good. And we're going to alternate our dry ingredients with our buttermilk. So that's really important. You don't want to dump it all in at once. So get a cup of buttermilk. And it's okay if you put it in the cup that you measured the molasses. It doesn't matter. You don't have to dirty another cup. And then you just add, alternating. You'll notice about this recipe, it's not like a regular cake mix, cake batter that you could pour. It's more like a really thick cookie dough. And it needs to be like that because you're going to spread it on parchment paper. You're not going to pour it into a tin. All right, so we're alternating. So after a few minutes of alternating the buttermilk and the flour, you end up with a batter, as you can see. It's really, really thick. That's what you want. If you can pour it, then you should add some more flour to it, because you want it to be really thick like this. And now we're gonna put this in the fridge for 30 minutes. And then after it firms up a little bit, I'll show you how to actually make the layers by spreading it on some parchment paper. So our cake batter has been in the fridge for about 30 minutes. And like I said before, you don't put it in a cake pan. You actually just draw an 8-inch circle on some parchment paper and spread it out. And you'll see in a moment, it's just like gingerbread cookie dough. So that's all you need the pan for, is just for your circle. You can see how thick it is. It's really like it's like a molasses cookie dough. About a cup into each circle. You can do this if you want. I know some people like to spread it with an offset cake spatula. But this is really pretty easy, just to spread it like that, and then every once in a while just a little bit of water on your fingers. And the good thing about having the spreader is the top of it's real smooth. But you know, you don't need to worry about that too much, because in the oven it smooths out on its own. So I just kind of go like that a little bit, press it down. And if you see a spot that's a little thin, like this is a little thinner over there, just, it doesn't have to be perfect. Just kind of even it out a little bit. You'll see in the oven it spreads a little bit, just a little bit, and flattens out. I kind of just go around then and get rid of all my fingerprints on there. That's it. You do that 6 times. Bake these in a 350-degree oven for about 10 minutes. And then when they cool off, I'll show you how to layer it. Now that your cakes are all baked and cooled, you're ready to assemble. So, just want to peel it off the parchment paper. It's like a big gingerbread cookie. And about a cup of filling. Just eyeball it, doesn't have to be exact. You'll have a little bit left over. It freezes really well. You can use it for something else. You could make hand pies with the rest of the filling if you've got some puff pastry in the freezer. But you want to be generous with the applesauce because it's going to soak into the layers. Just keep doing this until you get all your layers built with no apple filling on the top. Boom. Okay, now your cake is assembled and it's time to cover it up and leave it alone for 24 to 48 hours. So I like to use the press and seal because you can make a nice tight seal around it. Stick it in the fridge, and after 24 to 48 hours it will be ready to serve, and you can just sprinkle it with powdered sugar. Serve it with whipped cream or vanilla ice cream, it's ready to go. There you go. A lot of steps to it, but it's easy. And once you get the hang of it, it comes together really quickly. So hope you enjoy it. If you would like the written instructions for how to make this, just check out the library's webpage. And if you have any questions, don't hesitate to email me. And thanks for watching.